All right, welcome back to the Atlanta Child Murders Revisited. This is 24 October, and this is video number ATKID video number 6. And we're going to go back into the Atlanta Monster House. We're going to finish up on this, and then we're going to move to some other different areas and locations in Atlanta that are important in the Atlanta child murders. So, again, I want to just point out a few things real quick. This is the church. We all remember this church. The press was camped out in the parking lot here until the police were able to push them because of Homer Williams' influence with the civic leaders down to the end of the block there. Um, there's a video and chasing him. And the reason he was coming out of that house is because there was an Atlanta policeman that lived right there. I don't know who it was, but I just remember reading about there was an Atlanta policeman that lived right in that house, right across the street from Wayne Williams. And people say, well, how could he be killing all those people, all those kids, bringing them, all those kids to that house and killing them in the house? And there's an Atlanta policeman living right across the street. Well, if you think about it this way, if you're an Atlanta policeman, you're probably working, 9 to 5, 8 to 5, something like that. Wayne would get up, get going about 2 o'clock, sometimes bring the kids back almost immediately. When he got Earl Terrell, it was 4 o'clock. Okay. So he could easily drive them up this driveway around the back and no one would see anything. Okay. Or it could be 2 in the morning. He brings some kid back and no one sees anything. Okay. Because think about it. Think about your neighbors. Think about the people that live in the apartment right next door to you. And think about, at your work, the people that live in, the people that work in the cubicle right next to you. You don't know what they're doing. All you see is them at work. And maybe your neighbors, maybe you wave to them. Maybe your kids play together, you know, but you're not at their house 24 hours a day watching them, seeing what they do, who come and goes. It's impossible. We all have our own lives to live. We're all busy running around. So we don't have time to keep tabs on everybody that we work with, or our neighbors, or relatives, or even our brothers or sisters. Anybody could be up to anything, and you would have no idea, okay? Because we all play the game. We're all taught how to act properly among people, in groups. It starts off, we're socialized in elementary school and junior high. And by the time we become adults, we've got a pretty damn good idea of how we're supposed to act in public and not. Because if not, you're sanctioned. If you start carrying on, you got ADD or whatever, or just running around like a little kid when you're 15 years old, people stop associating with you. There's something wrong with that guy, something not right with him. You know what I'm saying? Or if you've got Tourette syndrome, things like that. So we all have been socialized and programmed on how we're supposed to act, especially in American society, the proper way to act. And we all know people, we've all seen in the news where people say, oh, I can't believe he went off and got an AK-47 and went down to the mall and killed 20 people. He just seemed like a normal kid to me. It seemed like, he was in the science club. He was a hard-working student. He liked dogs. All these things. We all know how to act. But there are certain people that go beyond how we're supposed to act and do things that are not normal, and some things that are even immoral and illegal. Okay? Now, I'm not saying I did things immoral and illegal, but at a very, very young age, I guess because I had a lot of freedom from when I was about 3 to 9, living in Monroe with very little adult supervision. So I wasn't as socialized as most people are. Okay. And I could kind of see, I didn't have my blinders on. I could see, um, I could tell if people were telling the truth or being sincere or congruent when others couldn't and they were just snowballed. Now, I always stayed in line and did what I was supposed to do because I had this bulldog of my stepdad that the first few times of me stepping outside the boundaries, it's like the sheepdog, okay? And you got the sheep. You have the fence at first, but then you have the sheepdog. And eventually some sheep will step out and they get nipped on the rear end by the sheepdog. Eventually, you don't need the fence if you have the sheepdog and you learn where the boundaries are, even though there's no fence. That's the way my dad was. He was the sheepdog that kept me in line. Even though I knew the boundaries were bullshit, I always had this sense of it's all a bunch of crap. They're all a bunch of fucking fakers. They're all. I had a very cynical about people because I could see right through every bullshit lie that every adult was saying. And I knew the game and I knew a lot of it was bullshit. But Wayne knew the game too. And he knew the rules and he knew how he was supposed to act. But Wayne had this aspect, like me, of him that was very cynical about all the rules and about all the things. I never broke the law. I never killed anybody. Wayne found he had freedom when he got outside those norms, outside the boundary, got past the sheepdog, okay? He didn't want to be corralled by the sheepdog. He wanted to be the sheepdog and create the boundaries. And that's what he did. Whether Wayne was being told to kill the kids by his partners in the adult porn industry and that these kids are getting out of line, they may tell, um, you need to get rid of that kid, or he just decided to go off and start killing them on his own for whatever reason he had. We don't know. I do know that Wayne Williams was abused as a child. It's pretty damn obvious. Almost all murderers and killers and serial killers were abused as children. This is how they end up being like they are. Okay? They have a low self esteem because of the abuse. And how instead of doing it the healthy way, like going to a counselor, talking about it, working out your problems, they overcompensate and find power by becoming the abuser. Okay? So it's kind of a weird thing in psychology is that, and we all see this in the movies, they talk about this all the time, that you're helpless, you're weak, you're abused, you have no power. And this is it's kind of the American story that we always root for the underdog. We even see this, like I live in Israel, we even see this in the Gaza war, that even though the Palestinians were the murderers and the terrorists and the rapists, and they caused the war to occur, eventually the worm turns in 2 years because of Israel's war, and so many Palestinians are killed that the killers become the victims. The murderers, the rapists become the victims or are seen as the victims. So in America, we always cheer the underdog, okay? And that is kind of a perverse sense of what happened to Wayne Williams. He was the abused, he was the underdog. And in the killings, he found power, he found his way, he found glory, he found fame as the king of terror. We all felt it, we all knew it. From 75 to 79, well, even before 75, I wandered around as a kid with no boundaries, no sheepdog. I did what I wanted. I stayed out of trouble because I knew if I did get into trouble, my dad would be there to let me know about it. But without getting into trouble, I had freedom. Freedom to stay out late as long as I told my parents where I was going. We'd run around and play football in the middle of the night. We'd run around and play army, hide and go seek till, midnight. We had freedom. We could walk to the store and get candy. We could ride our bikes to the movie theaters miles and miles away, and we had no fear. I guess it was also kind of young innocence. We didn't know that there were killers out there. But when the Atlanta child murders started in the summer of 79, that world changed for me. My childhood ended, and I blame that on Wayne Williams in the summer of 79. So Wayne found himself and found his glory and found his power when he had no power. He was playing the game, trying to get ahead, and it wasn't working. So, in some sense, some people would rather be infamous to be famous than to not have any fame or glory at all. So, in that sense, Wayne found his power in killing. Also, I believe because the abuser of Wayne was probably someone prominent in Atlanta's black community, a policeman, an elected official, a minister, someone that he couldn't tell on, that had power over him and abused that power. I think that the killings are Wayne's revenge. He saw himself in the victims that he killed. He identified with them. That's why they were young. That's why they were, a lot of them were in the special honors program at school, just like him. He saw the potential that he never was able to achieve because he saw the world how it really was. And no matter how hard he worked as a young black man, there was a limit. It wasn't the American dream that you work hard and apply yourself and the sky's the limit. There was a limit as a young black male, and he realized that at an early age, and he was angry about it. He'd been sold this bill of goods that if you just work hard, apply yourself, study hard, work hard, do all these things, obey the rules, you can be somebody in America. But he looked around and he saw that wasn't the case. He saw the reality at an early age, on top of the fact that many of those people that were espousing this, just work hard, do good in school, obey your parents, were the same people that had abused him. And he saw the hypocrisy of the system that was holding him down and holding African American society down, and he rebelled. And he wanted to show the hypocrisy of what was going on. Now, I'm not trying to praise Wayne Williams. I'm just maybe giving a supposition of what he saw and what happened. It could just be as simple as he was abused and he got back at society. But I think he was trying to make a point that, oh, you're a poor black kid and you're up and coming and you're in the gifted program and you're going to make it, right? No, I'll show you. Because I was like you too. But you're not going to race ahead of me. I didn't make it, so you're not going to make it. He didn't attack white society. He didn't attack little white girls and little white boys because that wasn't his world. He went after the hypocrisy he saw in his world. He wanted to leave it, tear it open, to leave it raw, so everyone could see that there was no future in the way the game was played. That's just my supposition. And he did that by, the African American community was up and coming. We got a new mayor, new African American police chief. It seemed like the sky was the limit for the African, blacks are moving into their own homes and suburbs instead of being renters or getting their own jobs. But he wanted to show there was a limit, that it wasn't the sky's the limit, like in the white community. And I think he did a damn good job at it. He showed the hypocrisy. He went after his own society and terrorized them for selling him a lie. He got his revenge for them not protecting him and allowing these leaders in their own society to abuse him. That was his terror. Now, we all remember 9/11. We all remember the terror. We all remember the different levels, green to red, 1 to 5, the anxiety, the TSA, the pat downs, taking off the shoes, the anthrax. We all remember the terror of that. We never knew if another attack was coming and who was going to be next. And just like bin Laden used that terror to gain his fame. He reveled in that terror. And just like bin Laden, that's what Wayne Williams was doing. He reveled in that terror. He showed the system that, yeah, we're not going to make it if you obey the rules and do what everybody else says to do and follow the mold. You're not going to make it. There's a limit. And I'm going to expose and tear open the hypocrisy to this whole bullshit system. But I'm going to do it in a way that terrorizes you and makes you feel helpless. And that's exactly what he did. He killed their children. Just like the story of the Pied Piper. You remember that? The Pied Piper, that town, they hired the Pied Piper to get rid of the rats. They offered to pay him a fee to do that. When he did his mission, got rid of the rats, they balked and refused to pay him. He went off, and then while all the adults were gone, he came back into town, played his music, and the kids followed him out of town, and the kids were never seen again. He terrorized the town for their hypocrisy. He terrorized the town by killing their children. It's one thing to kill you, but then your terror is over. Your misery is done. You're in the grave. It's over. But if you kill someone's children, that's a legacy they live with forever until the day they die. And that's the legacy that lives even to this day for the families of the children that were killed by Wayne Williams and the city. Atlanta has tried to move past the Atlanta child murders, but in the shadows, in the gutters, in the alleyways, in the tenement homes, in the woods, near the rivers, is the shadow of the Atlanta child murders. It still terrorizes us to this very, very day because we don't know why he did what he did. We don't know if that was all of the people that killed the children. We don't know if it really ended. Did the nightmare end? We hope so, right? If you ask many people in the African American community, it's not over. the terror still lingers. Wayne Williams tore open the fabric of black mobility society in America and shredded it. He ripped it, he burnt it, and put it into ashes. And we still carry on with an empty model of the way we believe things should be. But we look around and we see our world and we know that that was all a lie, that it's not really the way we try to model it as. I'm not saying he's a hero. I'm just saying that that's the result of the Atlanta child murders. So I'm going to keep going on here and I'm going to show you the locations. I'm going to go over the people and the organizations involved in the Atlanta child murders. It was more than just Wayne. Wayne was the killer. Either he was an executioner or he was a sick serial killer. Whether people told him to kill the children and he did it and he used that room as an execution chamber, we'll never know. Or he could have just went to all of this industry of putting out flyers, grooming all the kids, setting up this fake music group just to kill kids. He could have just done that anytime, anywhere. But we're going to keep trudging along here. And another aspect you have to think about is, I'm going to get into this a little greater detail later, is, well, there's always the questions. The who. We know who. It was Wayne. Do we know if there were others? Probably. I believe so. So there's the who, the what. The what was he killed them. The where. Why didn't he kill them where he got them? Why didn't he get them in the car or just get out of the car and stab them? Why didn't he just shoot them on the corner? You know, did like Son of Sam, just shoot them as they're walking down the street. Or the DC sniper. He could have shot him from a distance, right? Same result, still a dead kid, right? What was so important about getting them in the car? And then once he got him in the car, why didn't he just take him to the woods? Why didn't he just take him to an alley? Why didn't he just take him to some empty warehouse and kill him there? Shoot him just like he did Edward Hope Smith. Just take him to the side of the road and shoot him, right? Why did he take him home and kill him on the back bedroom? What was so important about that? I believe there were two things involved. It was a controlled killing room. He could control the forensic evidence, the blood, the fingerprints, anything that could link him to the murders. If you're killing someone down an alley or a back street, there's a chance you could get caught. I'll give you an example. I had this roommate in the military. We had these 3-man quads. I didn't know him that well because he was going to Russian school and I was working on post. And one day we turn on the news in the community room and find out he's been arrested for attempted murder. And so what happened is there was this girl. Nobody knows why he tried to kill her, but he got her out, got her drunk. She passed out. He put her in the back of the seat of the car. She woke up, and while he was driving down the road, she woke up. He pulled to the side of the road, got out of the car, pushed open her door, and proceeded to bash her in the head with a big, long, black mag flashlight. He would have killed her right there. But a police officer just happened to be coming up on a car or down the road, and saw the headlights and saw the car was shaking and moving and pulled up on him, turned the lights on. He jumps out. He's covered in blood, and they pull their guns, freeze, don't move, and then get to the ground, and they handcuff him and put him in the car, and he's arrested. In the back of the car, they found an axe. They found a butcher knife. They found cement blocks, wire, and trash bags. So apparently he was going to kill this girl, chop her up, put the body in different bags, and then throw the body parts off into the ocean because we were in Monterey, California there. Have no idea why he attempted that. Um, a whole another long story. Eventually, he serves 15 years and gets out. Now he's running around talking about Jesus and how Jesus saved him and all this kind of bullshit. He's married and have 2 kids. Bunch of crap. But that's exactly why Wayne didn't take the kids to some back alley. That's exactly why he didn't go down some dark street, because he might get caught. That's exactly why he had his killing room in his house set up. He could bring them back there, do what he was going to do with them. Either going to do Bible study, play Yahtzee. I personally think he was filming them. Okay. Either with other people like Jimmy Ray Payne or Nathaniel Cater assisting him, or James Comento, or even Homer Williams assisting him. Okay. After Wayne gets caught on the bridge that morning, neighbors see, I think I mentioned this last episode, they're burning something in the fire pit, the barbecue pit, right behind the house. They were burning photos because the police found the little sides of film in the barbecue ashes. They also found paper with names on them. So he was burning the evidence linking him to the children. So what Wayne was doing was putting out flyers, writing letters to schools about, his talent management, Nova Entertainment, and also putting out ads on radio spots for people to call his phone number. The kids would call his phone number. I'll go into this greater detail. He would interview them over the phone, find out about them, then set up an interview at their home. He would go by there and interview the kids. And his whole purpose of going by the home was to assess the involvement of the parents. So if dad wasn't around, mom and dad were divorced, or mom worked 2 jobs and the kid was at home most of the time by himself, the kid went higher up on the list. If the parents were more involved, dad's home, they're very strict, kid went lower on the list. Then he would invite them to come by one of the 5 studios he worked at, either the one down in College Park, depending on the location where they're at, the sound pit, which was downtown, or the one in Buckhead. There was also one down near Stewart Lakewood that I mentioned in the previous video. He would meet the kids there. He would film them, videotape them. He would take pictures. He'd record their voice. He would have them fill out a long, extensive form. And then he would start the grooming process of grooming them, talking about this group, Gemini, which he was going to make into the next Jackson 5. And from 77 to 81, 4 or 5 years, he never, ever put together a music group. They never recorded a song. They never pressed an album. They never made a cassette and sent it to an agent. They never signed a contract. They never went to a talent contest. They never sang at a talent in a bar anywhere or a restaurant. They never sang on the radio. It never happened. Okay? But he continued the grooming process, and I believe what he did is that many of these kids were already involved at Tom Terrell's house or Wicoxen in the pornography industry, and that somehow along the way he got them involved in taking photos of them on the bed, at other places, on the bed at his house, at other places. He was taking photo and video of them. Eventually, he started having sex with them, okay? and videotaping and taking pictures of that. And then he would sell that to Jimmy Jin's Profile Modern Films, which was already involved in the pornography business. They were already involved selling child pornography. All through the pornography business in the 70s, there was an undercurrent of child pornography. In every porn store that people would go into, behind the counter, back in the back, there was child pornography called chicken books, okay? The owners would not sell it to you unless they knew you or they trusted you because they were afraid of getting arrested, okay? In 1979, maybe 78, 79, Congress had to pass a law outlawing child pornography because up until then, it hasn't been against the law legally, at least federal level. We're going to come across Michael Thieves, and he was charged with interstate transportation of pornography across interstate lines using the Postal Service and transporting across lines. And he fought with his lawyer, Ed Garland, all the way to the Supreme Court and got that law thrown out. After that, that was about 78, 79. After that, okay, his charges for interstate transportation of pornography were thrown out, but he still had murder charges that were on him for the murder of Jimmy Mays and Jap Hanna. He broke out of prison and killed the state's main witness, Roger Underhill, about who was testifying against him about the murders of Jap Hanna and Mays and his participation in it. So Wayne Williams, I believe, on that bed was recording children. I think he was recording pornography at other locations and taking pictures of them. He had groomed them and convinced them to trust him and that this was, part of the process of the entertainment industry to become famous. And like I said, some were already doing this to make money. He said it was sort of like, okay, well, until this record deal comes through, we can do this. You can make a little money on this side. And they trusted him. That's why when the witnesses see them, the kids getting in the car, they're not fighting. He's not pulling him in the car. He's not grabbing them off the street. They already know him. When he brings them to the house, they've been there before. Okay? They know what's going to happen. They're going to make a little extra money. They don't know that he's going to kill them. Okay? Same thing with the adults. The adults and him don't know that he's going to kill them. Anyway, so that's what's going on there. And again, he's able to get them in the car, pull the car around here, bring them inside. He's away with them, bed. He strangles them, kills them, dumps them on the floor, on the green carpet, rolls them up in that white blanket, puts them in the car. And maybe I've frozen. I don't know. We'll see what happens here. Yeah. Okay, good. I'm still recording. We're still good. Now, what I'm doing in these initial episodes is just kind of giving you a summary and a geographic lesson and introducing you to what's going on. Okay? And eventually I'm going to get into much more greater detail with evidence and documents. All right. So if this was a trial, this would be my opening statement of what happened and the murders and how they occurred. And then what my relationship is, okay? Because I could just go through and just tell you what I believe happened, but then there's also that aspect of what I know and what I experienced and what I saw. And I'm intermingling that into the story because it's important. It's important to me, it's important to the story. All right. We'll back off here. I'm sorry, my internet's a little slow. When I come to Atlanta, I want to stay at this hostel, Ecstasy. Ecstasy Hostile Urban Farm. It's literally right across the street from where Wayne Williams had been living. I want to stay there just to see what that's like. It's probably some old black grandma, you know, gonna get me back there, make me digging in the ground at fucking 60 years old. Anyway, so there was a place off of Roosevelt Highway in College Park, um, and it's called Hot Atlanta Records. Okay, and it was one of the music labels that was bought by Thieves and run by Jimmy Ginn Sr. And it's still owned to this day by Jimmy Ginn Jr. Matter of fact, I just got a news. I have these news alerts, and there's a news alert from Gen Music and GRC, which is General Recording Corporation. That's was the corporation started by Thieves to put all of his record industry labels underneath that. And they were suing some singer for using a song by Sammy Dees from the early 70s in one of their advertisements or something, and under copyright infringement, because to this day, Gen Music, James Ginn Jr., the son of James Ginn Sr., owns the rights to that music. So you have to pay them, okay? And this is how Thieves, another reason how Thieves got rich. Thieves not only invented these machines like little video booths that he put in he rented out to the different porn shops, and then it had a meter on it, and he'd send Roger Underhill to collect the money because he put coins in it like a video machine. And he got rich from that, but he also got rich on the distribution of the porn and other movies. He had distribution rights on the porn, other movies, regular movies, but also the music rights for different songs. And so every time you play a song, every time you show one of these movies that he had the distribution copyrights for, you'd have to pay him a fee, a distribution fee. And that's how Jimmy Ginn Jr. to this day is still making money from these distribution and movie rights that go all the way back to 1972. That was started by Thieves. Okay. So Hot Atlanta Records was one of these studios, one of the record labels. And to this day, Hot Atlanta Records is registered under Jimmy Ginn Jr. Okay. And it's not at Roosevelt down in College Park. It's right here at Hilltop, right next to Lakewood. They still own the Lakewood Hilltop property, and he's registered Hot Atlanta Records right there. Same thing with Modern and Profile Films. They're on Lakewood. There's 6 different houses here, and each house has a different record label or industry that goes all the way back to Thieves, that was handed over to Jimmy Ginn Sr. and then inherited by Jimmy Ginn Jr. And he's still making money off those record labels. He's still taking legal action on those record label distribution rights. Okay? And that all started with Thieves in the porn industry. Thieves got into the record music industry. He bought a music company, music distribution rights. He bought um, music studios, Hotlanta Records, Sound Pit Studios. He bought all those music labels. He even had a management group called James Management. And he did all that with the money that he made from the porn industry so he could launder it and make it legit. Okay. And then underneath that was the distribution rights. Okay. Or excuse me, underneath that was the distribution of the child porn. So we're going to go to 881 Memorial, which is right here. But right around this is everything related to the Atlanta child murders. Okay. So right here is Cabbagetown. When I was in junior high during the Atlanta child murders, kids would make jokes on the bus. Oh, you better be careful, or the Atlanta Monster is going to get you and put you in a child porn in Cabbagetown. Now, how would white kids in the white suburbs of Clayton County know about child pornography going on in Cabbagetown and that it was related to the Atlanta child murders, the Atlanta Monster? How would they make that connection? Well, they heard it from an adult somewhere. A lot of my friends, okay, were their dads or uncles were police officers, sheriffs, police on the Atlanta police force, or the Fulton County sheriff were involved in the investigations. They would come home after a hard day's work pulling bodies out of rivers and, you know, dragging the bones of dead children out of the woods, and they would discuss that at the dinner table with their wife or maybe in the bedroom in hushed whispers. And the children would hear that and they wouldn't know what all that was about. So apparently, somebody in the law enforcement knew there was child pornography going on that was related to the Atlanta child murders in Cabbagetown area off Memorial. They knew it. They had to have known it. And it had to be more than just one or two because it was filtering down to where their children heard it. When your children are hearing things, you're probably only hearing 10% of what's really going on. So if it had got to the point where kids were taunting other kids on the bus about the monster capturing them, putting them in a child porn in Cabbagetown, it meant, and those were the kids, the children of police officers on the task force, it meant that it was widespread knowledge all through the Atlanta police force and task force about the child pornography industry that was going on somewhere around Cabbagetown. And I'm telling you where it's at 881 Memorial. It had to be. Because if you follow down Boulevard, straight from Cabbagetown, you end up at the gates of the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary, where Michael Thieves was imprisoned there since 1979. In 1981, the FDIC and the IRS sued Michael Thieves and was trying to get him removed from the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary because they said he was still running his business, okay, out of the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. Now, all Michael Thieves' former businesses, okay, had been transferred to former girlfriends, okay, and Jimmy Ginn and Patricia McLean. Okay, and I'm going to get into Patricia McLean later. But Jimmy Ginn ran most of the studios, the Sound Pit, Hotlanta Records, and 881 Memorial Modern and Profile Films. Later in 1981, the IRS will take over the Sound Pit studios and auction it off. And Jimmy Ginn, who's at 81 Memorial, will put in the winning bid for the Sound Pit Studios at $450,000, $440,000 The IRS will say that he loses the bid because he doesn't get the money in time to him. Basically, he's trying to get the money through Garland, and Garland's visiting Thieves in jail and trying to tell Jimmy, Jen, and others where to go get the money because Thieves has got the money hidden all over the place. Okay. One of the places that they had money hidden was in the walls and the floors of the Sound Pit studio, because after Jimmy Jen loses the bid and it goes to a guy named Kinder, the studio is broken into, the walls and the floors are dug up, and it was like someone was looking for something, and tapes are destroyed and removed. Some people say that some of the voices and video of the Atlanta child murder people that are killed were on those tapes. This all happened within a week or two before Nathaniel Cater. Wayne was found on the bridge, and Nathaniel Cater's body is found 2 days later. Also around the same time, the morning that Wayne Williams is caught on the bridge, while Wayne Williams is burning pictures and paper in his back fireplace, downtown Atlanta, a jury has come back with a guilty verdict for Wilcoxon, the pornographer who had been arrested. He lived over near Earl Terrell, right over here. Come back with a conviction for him for child pornography. Let's see how we're doing on time here. Now, I'll just go over real quick. Yusuf Bell lived here, went down the street. He seen getting into a car here. His body is found right over here near Martin. Another person said on the Atlanta Monster that he was standing at the corner of Fulton, right across from the stadium, and Wayne Williams pulls up, asks for directions, offers him a ride, turns around in the street, almost runs up on the curb, was getting out to kidnap him, and the bus came. He got on the bus, and he was able to flee him. Right here, another guy came on the Atlanta Monster and said that he and his cousin broke into the zoo, left their bikes. When they came back, their bikes was gone, but standing near them was Wayne Williams. Wayne Williams offered them a ride back home, said his dad could give them a ride at that church. They went up the street to the church. He told them to get in this white station wagon, or maybe it was a blue car. I can't remember. And Wayne Williams pretends like he goes in the church. He comes out, gets angry. His personality completely changes and tries grabbing them and forcing them into the car. They break free and get away. And then later on, he recognized it was Wayne Williams. Another kid went out on his bike with some tools, and his body was found behind a bar right here, literally blocks away from 881 Memorial. Luby Getter lived right in this neighborhood here. I'm going to show you. There's a whole bunch of kids that lived right in this neighborhood. Darren Glass disappeared right here. And another guy was found at the end of the intersection, stabbed right here. I think it was Porter. Okay. So at 881 Memorial, there was a building, a warehouse, and since 1972, it was listed as the address for Profile Films and Modern Films. Okay. Now, those were for the regular PG-13 R-rated type movies that Thieves had the distribution rights for. Okay. Inside this same building, he also did some of his porn distribution. Now, at another location up at Marietta, where Thieves had his headquarters, Marietta Street, right next to Olympic Park, Now, Thieves went to jail in December of 1974, but in April of 1981, almost 7 years later, the IRS seizes the warehouse, sells the equipment inside to get back. They were still trying to get back the taxes owed by Thieves. Um, and inside, they find stacks and stacks, if not tons, of magazines and film that was just brand new within a couple of months of pornography. No child pornography, but adult pornography. So if Thieves had been in jail for 6 years, who was still producing the pornography? Through his Pendulum Press. Now, that warehouse was owned by one of his companies. He had like so many different companies, but it was under the CEO of a former girlfriend of Thieves. Okay, she obviously wasn't running the business. It was Jimmy Jen using that warehouse to distribute the printed material. Right here is where they kept the videotapes and the 8 millimeter. Now, in the front, according to the affidavit I read, there was an office, there was a studio, two little studios right here. Then there was the warehouse that kept the like modern film, the regular, PG-13 rated R type movies here. Behind that, all the way to the back, was the adult industry films and magazines. And then in the very, very back was the child porn they found behind a locked door back in the very, very, very back. And this was rated, I think, in the mid 80s. So all the way up to the mid 80s, somebody under Thieves' former company that had now been transferred to Jimmy Jen was still distributing pornography. And they also found child pornography right back here behind these doors, behind the walls. A judge threw out the warrant and threw out the child pornography, the charges for the child pornography, because the warrant didn't include that room. The informant that had bought pornography and had bought child pornography never went in this room, never saw any of the pornography coming out of that room. He never went into this building. He was standing outside here. Okay? After that, well, before that, how it worked was the distribution was there would be a courier, a private courier that would come. All the boxes were double boxed, double taped. Inside the regular film was the pornography plus the child pornography wrapped up separately. It was given to couriers. Couriers would go to the different cities, or they would fly it out to various different cities. It would go to an associate in that city, usually a Gambino family member, business, or lawyer. The local porn, they'd had a courier that would go around to deliver it to the local porn shops, and that's how the distribution would work. So they would produce stuff here. Thieves had another film studio that he was an associate with out there that he bought for $1 back in the 70s. That was really owned by the Gambinos out in Los Angeles. They used kids out there, and he had also worked with this Dave Curl, who was this serial killer in Houston, and he bought some of his stuff with a guy named Roy Ames, who he had gone in business with at a pornography theater in New Orleans back in the 70s. And so that's how the distribution worked. This business was in business all the way up into approximately 2001, 2005, something like that. Eventually, modern films, profile films. And the Sound Pit, when the Sound Pit was taken over and sold to Kinder, In October, well, Jimmy Jen went to court and tried to sue the IRS to get the studio back. The judge threw it out. And so he took the name Soundpit Studio Music and Movies and transferred it to this address in October of 1981. Eventually, they would shut down this warehouse because it was the digital age. Nobody was getting films, and over the years, the people were buying less, videotapes and DVDs and child pornography books and stuff like that, and it was all going online. So eventually, they shut down the warehouse here in the productions, but they kept on the name and the distribution rights for the movies that were legitimate underneath that, and they transferred those industries to the houses down in Lakewood at Hilltop, Lakewood, Pryor. They had like basically one address, one rental house was assigned to each business. Not that they were running it out of those rental houses; they were just using that address. And Jimmy Jen lived up in Smyrna, Senior, that is, until he died, or Marietta. And then eventually his son takes over all that, and his son was running everything out of Roswell and Alpharetta. And he is doing that up to this day. Hotlanta Records, I believe the Sound Pit, and music and movies, and let's see, Profile and Modern Films and Gen Music still use all those addresses down in Lakewood for their mailing address. So, all right, we've reached kind of the end here. So this is where it all happened in the 70s and 80s. This is where I believe many of the children, Wayne would pick up the kids. He would bring them here, okay? Whether the time he was going to kill them or other times. They would film. Oh, you want to make extra money? Here, let's go here. He would film them. Sometimes he would, depending on if he couldn't trust them, he wouldn't bring them here. He would film it at his house and then bring the tapes here and sell them, okay? He would videotape himself molesting the kids, having sex with the kids doing stuff with Wayne, and then he would take video and pictures of that. I believe that Nathaniel Cater and Jimmy Jen and Homer Williams were involved in that process of videotaping and taping them, okay? And then he would kill them. He would strangle them, and he would videotape that. Whether he sold that as snuff films, I don't know. Somewhere out there, someone has video or 8mm tapes or pictures of some of the Atlanta child murdered victims. Somewhere out there, either before they were killed or while they were being killed. Somewhere out there. But of course, if you have bought child pornography, the last thing you're going to do is go to the police and say, hey, I bought naked pictures of these kids in child pornography from Wayne Williams. And then these kids end up dead. This is proof that Wayne Williams is involved in the Atlanta child murders. You're not going to do that. You're going to burn those fucking tapes, or you're going to lock that shit up. So anyways, we're out of time. We're going to continue and just keep going over the different areas. And then once I've done my summary, I'll start going into more detail on the paperwork, the documents, the facts, and the evidence. All right, take care. All right, bye-bye.